Professor Anne Krueger joins me now. She is a Senior Research Professor of International Economics at the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies. So Anne, you've been in the last session today of the 8th Forum for the Future of Agriculture, talking about trade from a US perspective for you, but from an economic perspective as a professional, and hearing the views of the European Parliament, European farmers, and many other voices. What was your main message to the forum today?
Well, I was asked to speak about the role of trade with relation to agriculture and about the prospects for the two preferential arrangements that the United States is negotiating, one the TTIP and one the TPP. And I started by talking about how agriculture had not benefited from the earlier multilateral trade negotiations, which did so much for growth in manufacturing and industry, and how agriculture in the 21st century had to do more, and it would be good for everybody to get it more efficient. And so I then talked a bit about that, and then went on, and I think I was probably very discouraging about the prospects for TPP and TTIP, at least for now, partly because the U.S. Congress hasn't even passed what we call fast track, which is what gives the Congress binds itself so that it will only vote up or down. It won't try and make amendments. And of course, nobody in their right mind is going to negotiate as long as they can amend it after it's negotiated. And even the Japanese have said they won't do any further negotiation until that happens. And the prospects for getting TTIP through the JPA, the Trade Promotion Authority, through this spring are very small. But we're going into an election cycle in the U.S., and the odds that it would happen then, I think, are very low. So if fast track is not passed in the next month or two, I don't see much hope for TPP, and this will advance the TTIP. So I think in both cases, they're not very likely to happen in the next year or two, and probably not until the beginning of 2017 when there's a new administration.
You were a bearer of bad tidings, in other words, and was there frustration shared within the forum around that?
Well, I don't know whether it was shared per se, but I mean the other speakers seem to agree with it too, and I think it isn't. Pessimism is just a realistic, I think, interpretation of where things are at, and we've had such trouble with trade negotiations, and the American Congress anyway has been so paralyzed that the message, I think, needed telling.
It seemed that there was a message about the US not really engaging, not really talking, that the European Parliament wants to engage more with the Senate, more with Congress, that was going to be some essential oil in the wheels if anything was to happen in the next round, for example.
Well, that was my message, and she was just agreeing with it, that she'd been in Washington and she saw exactly the same thing, as several others were perhaps maybe hoping I was a little too pessimistic.
Of course, Europe is faced with debt-fueled consumption, as many developing countries are. They need a growth model, they need sustainable intensification, they need to outreach with exports, and so many barriers are put in the way. How do you see, in terms of negotiation moving forward now, whether there will be any appetite in the near future?
Well, a Doha round, as you know, is sitting there, and it was 2/3, 3/4. It was very much negotiated, but not everything. And I keep hoping that will get concluded, because that would help the developing countries a lot. But at the moment, there doesn't seem to be much motion on that one either. I think it's just, as you said, no appetite.
How important, however, finally, are forums like this to talk about the need to feed a growing world, to bring so many out of poverty, to not go hungry, to redistribute some of the food produced. How important is it to come and discuss, whether it's good news or bad news about trade negotiations, but to have these collaborative kind of discussions?
Well, I think it helps. I mean, I think that any one of these where people can agree, as they did here, on the importance of agriculture, on the importance of getting things moving, is a move in the right direction. You can never tell if something does finally happen, you can never tell whether it was this, that, or the other thing that made it happen. And usually it's a constellation of things, but having more support for something really can help it. So I think it's important.
And a final message was that it's important that women speak, that women are part of, smallholders and circular economy and all of those things. So good to see you, Anne Murray, on the panel today.
Thank you.